Hours after the rally ended, Donald Trump was hit with yet another absurd fake accolade, the so-called Hooters National Book Award. A joke, sure, but like most jokes about Trump, the punchline cut a little too deep. One late-night comedian quipped it was the breast of times, the worst of boobs. And suddenly, even something as grand-sounding as the FIFA Peace Prize felt hollow. Like begging your parents for a PlayStation and unwrapping a pair of plain white socks. The timing wasn't random. It was surgical, because just hours earlier, during a sprawling, directionless campaign rally in New Hampshire, Donald Trump looked shaken. Not the usual theatrical rage, not the red-faced, fist-pumping fury. This was something quieter, something defensive, the kind of discomfort that surfaces when a man who spent his life building armor feels the first crack spreading through it. For weeks, whispers about Trump's mental sharpness had been swelling. Late-night monologues, opinion columns, social media clips sliced and looped, speeches that circled, contradicted, and collapsed mid-thought. The mockery wasn't new, but the tone had shifted, and Trump could feel the shift like a draft in a locked room. So he did what he has always done when reality closes in too tight. He reached for the myth. He leaned toward the podium. His voice dropped low, conspiratorial, as if the next words were meant only for those who truly believed. He smiled. The kind of smile someone wears when they're about to tell a story they've rehearsed 1,000 times. "I was a genius in high school," he said. The crowd drew closer, pulled by the gravity of confidence. "People don't know that," he continued. "I was the top student. Teachers would actually walk up to me and say, 'Donald, you already know more than the textbooks.'" He paused, letting the silence do the work. "I was a legend in that school." The crowd roared. Cheers, clapping, whistles. Not because the story was new. It wasn't. It was old, worn smooth by repetition, like a stone passed through too many hands. But Trump had always understood something deep and dangerous about performance. If you say something with enough force, often enough, people stop looking for proof. Over the years, this story, the misunderstood genius, held down by jealous elites, had become one of the central pillars of his identity. Not just smart, brilliant, not just successful, born superior. The myth didn't need evidence, it needed volume. And volume was Trump's greatest instrument. But what the crowd in New Hampshire didn't know, what they couldn't possibly see, was that while Trump was performing the legend, someone else, hundreds of miles away, was quietly opening a file. That same evening, more than 300 miles south, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert began unlike any episode before it. No music, no band warming up in the corner, no flashing applause sign coaxing laughter from the seats. The studio lights rose slowly, like curtains pulling back on something somber. Stephen Colbert sat behind his desk in perfect stillness. His hands rested, folded neatly, over a small yellowed index card sealed inside a clear plastic sleeve, like a relic pulled from a forgotten vault. The desk was bare. The room didn't feel like a comedy set. It felt like a courtroom. "Welcome back," Colbert said. His voice was even, no grin, no twinkle. "Last night," he continued, "the former president told a crowd that he was a high school genius. He let those words float in the air like smoke. He said he knew more than the textbooks. Then, without hurry, he lifted the card from the desk. And as he did, the atmosphere shifted, because geniuses don't usually need to announce themselves. And some legends don't survive when the records finally surface. The audience felt it instantly. This was not going to be a regular monologue. Colbert didn't crack a joke to cut the tension. He didn't shift in his chair. His hands stayed exactly where they were, folded over the sealed card, as though even a sudden movement might shatter something delicate, or detonate something dangerous. "Now," Colbert said, measuring every syllable. "That story raises an interesting question." He stopped. "Because geniuses don't usually go around announcing themselves." A soft ripple of laughter rolled through the audience, but it died fast. Colbert wasn't chasing laughs. He was constructing something. "They don't have to," he went on. "They don't need stages. They don't need rallies. They don't need standing ovations. They just do things." He leaned in slightly. "They cure diseases. They build machines. They leave behind work that speaks louder than any speech ever could." Another beat of silence. "So, when a person tells you they were a genius," Colbert said, "the only responsible thing to do is check." The word check dropped like a stone into still water. Colbert lifted the card and turned it slowly toward the lens. The card was old. Its corners were rounded by time. The ink slightly faded, like handwriting caught between memory and disappearance. Time had touched it, but it hadn't erased it. "So, we contacted the archives of the New York Military Academy," he said, "and what we found was detailed." The screen behind him came alive. Black and white photographs filled the frame. Dormitories, classrooms, cadets marching in neat lines, frozen mid-stride. It didn't feel like nostalgia. It felt like evidence from a buried era. Back then, Colbert explained, teachers didn't write for likes or retweets. They weren't worried about getting sued. They wrote notes for one reason only. He stopped. To tell the truth, the studio had gone perfectly quiet. Colbert adjusted his glasses with slow precision. This, he said, raising the card once more, is Cadet Donald J. Trump's final chemistry evaluation. A date appeared on screen. Spring, 1964. Colbert read slowly, every word given its full weight. Donald is the most confident student I have ever encountered. A few nervous chuckles broke through the silence, but Colbert kept going. Unfortunately, he continued, this confidence is entirely unburdened by knowledge. The laughter this time was louder, but it carried an uncomfortable edge, because the line didn't land like a punchline. It landed like a medical report. Colbert held up his hand. That's just the opening sentence, he said. It goes deeper. He looked back down at the card. During laboratory sessions, he read, Donald refuses to take part in any experiments. The audience shifted in their seats. He regularly assigns work to younger cadets, offering them money in exchange for their effort. A few gasps. He then submits the results under his own name. Colbert looked up. Let me be clear, he added. That's not leadership. That's subcontracting. The audience laughed, but the laughter didn't last. It melted quickly into silence. Colbert continued. When experiments go wrong, he said, Donald rejects all responsibility and shifts blame to others. He paused. My personal favorite, Colbert added, his voice bone dry, is the time he blamed the laboratory table itself for being, and I quote, weak and poorly built. The laughter came back sharper this time, with teeth. But something had changed inside the room. The audience wasn't just laughing at Trump anymore. They were recognizing him. The deflection, the blame shifting, the absolute refusal to admit a mistake. You don't need to hear a pattern twice to know it's real. But, Colbert said, sitting up straighter, let's be fair. He set the card down gently. Maybe science wasn't his subject. He leaned back slightly. A genius doesn't need to be good at everything, right? He reached beneath the desk and pulled out a second document. This one was thicker. He held it at an angle so the camera could catch the edges, red ink bleeding through the page, corrections layered on corrections like geological strata. This, Colbert said, is a history paper. The screen behind him updated. Assignment: summarize the causes of the American Civil War. Colbert cleared his throat with exaggerated care. I'm going to read the opening paragraph exactly as it was written, he said. No edits, no commentary. He began. The Civil War was very unfair to the South. Lincoln was nasty, very nasty. If I had been there, I would have made a deal. A beautiful deal. The room froze, every face locked. Colbert stopped reading. He looked directly into the camera, then down at the page, then back again. The grade, he said calmly, was a minus. The studio erupted, but Colbert raised his palm again. There's a teacher's note, he added. He read it aloud. Please see me after class. You cannot negotiate with slavery. The laughter this time was enormous, but it carried weight, deep, rumbling, unsettled weight. Because this wasn't parody. This was a mirror held up at close range, but Colbert wasn't finished, not even close. He reached beneath the desk one final time, and this time his arm strained slightly. Because what he pulled out wasn't a card. It wasn't a sheet of paper. It was a book, a thick, leather-bound volume, heavy with age. This, Colbert said quietly, is the guidance counselor's full report. The studio went completely silent. Not a whisper, not a cough. Colbert didn't open it right away. Instead, he pressed his palm flat against the cover, like someone bracing themselves before stepping onto thin ice. This document, he said, was never meant for television. The audience leaned in. Not because it was classified, Colbert continued, but because it was personal. He lifted the cover. The pages inside were yellowed, brittle, typed on a mechanical typewriter. No emojis. No spin, no audience in mind, just raw, unfiltered observations written for a file no one was supposed to read. And before I share any of it, Colbert added, I need to say something. He looked straight into the lens. This isn't about politics. It's about patterns. A beat of silence. Patterns don't vote. They don't campaign. They don't lie. He turned the first page. This report, he said, was written by a counselor assigned to cadets labeled as difficult. The word difficult hovered in the air, refusing to land. Not academically struggling, Colbert clarified. Not socially awkward. He paused. Difficult to place. He began to read. Cadet Trump demonstrates an intense need for admiration. The room went still. He reacts poorly to criticism, frequently interpreting it as a personal attack rather than constructive feedback. Colbert stopped reading and looked up. That line, he said, was written when he was 16 years old. A visible ripple passed through the crowd. He continued. When praised, Donald displays charm and remarkable energy. When challenged, he becomes hostile, dismissive, or theatrical. Colbert raised one eyebrow. Theatrical, he repeated. That's counselor language for making a scene. A soft laugh rose and fell quickly. He turned the page. Donald frequently exaggerates his achievements, the audience murmured. He speaks of future accomplishments in sweeping terms, often entirely detached from his current performance. Colbert glanced up briefly. In simpler words, he wasn't winning anything, but he talked as if he already had. The room grew heavier. Now, Colbert said, lowering his voice, this is where it gets uncomfortable. He leaned in. The counselor was asked a single question. He lifted one finger. Just one. He read, "Does this cadet demonstrate leadership potential?" He paused. The silence stretched thin, almost unbearable. Then he read the answer. Yes, but with serious reservations. The audience exhaled together, one collective breath released. Colbert went on. Donald possesses a confidence that naturally attracts followers. Another pause. However, his leadership relies on dominance rather than trust. The words settled slowly, like dust after an explosion. He seeks loyalty without offering accountability. Colbert closed the book gently. He let the silence sit there, untouched. Nobody moved, because everybody in that room already knew exactly what those words meant. Then Colbert opened the book again. There's a final paragraph, he said, one the counselor underlined by hand. He read carefully. If given power without structure, Donald may prioritize personal validation over collective responsibility. A beat. He is most dangerous when surrounded by affirmation. The studio was dead now. No laughter, no applause, no shuffling. Colbert looked up. That sentence, he said softly, was written more than 50 years ago. He closed the book. And yet, he added, it sounds like it could have been written this morning. The camera cut to the audience. Faces frozen, brows tight. People weren't watching a comedy show anymore. They were connecting lines between decades. But here's the thing, Colbert said, shifting in his seat. This report didn't stop anything. He leaned forward. It didn't change his direction. It didn't slow him down even slightly. He gave a faint, almost sad smile. In fact, it vanished. The audience reacted. A collective intake of breath. Yes, Colbert said. For decades, this document was buried. Not lost, not destroyed. He tapped the cover with his finger. He lowered his voice to almost a whisper. Filed away. A cold wave passed through the room. So the real question isn't what this report says, Colbert continued. The real question is, he stopped. Who decided that nobody should ever see it? The screen behind him flickered one more time. A new image filled the frame. A single word, stamped in red ink. Withheld. Colbert stared at it. Because when you hide a warning, he said, you're not protecting someone's privacy. He turned back to the camera. You're postponing the consequences. Colbert didn't smile. Not the polished late-night smile, not the after-the-punchline grin. This was different, stripped, bare. This report, he said slowly, was sealed in 1964. The audience waited. It stayed sealed through college, through business school, through bankruptcy, through television stardom. He stopped. And through the presidency. A murmur rippled across the studio. Yes, Colbert said. The warning followed him everywhere, but it never caught up. He leaned forward. So let's talk about what happens when warnings are ignored. The screen shifted again. Images appeared. Not dramatic, not edited for comedy. Press conferences, cabinet meetings, rallies, moments people had already seen 100 times. But now through the lens of this report, every clip looked different. Every time a general corrected him, Colbert said, he attacked the general. Clip. Every time an expert disagreed, he dismissed the expert. Clip. Every time reality pushed back, he pushed harder. Clip. This, Colbert said quietly, is exactly what the counselor described. He picked up the book again. Fragile relationship with reality. Clip. Seeks loyalty without accountability. Clip. Most dangerous when surrounded by affirmation. Clip. The studio sat in silence. Not because the clips were shocking, because they were familiar. And here's the part that nobody likes to hear, Colbert continued, looking directly into the camera. This wasn't hidden because it was wrong. He let those words settle into the silence. It was hidden because it was accurate. A beat. Institutions don't bury lies, he said. They bury liabilities. He closed the book one last time. Teachers saw it first. Images of classrooms appeared. Then professors. Lecture halls filled the screen. Then advisors. Then staff. Then cabinet members. The images shifted, decade by decade. All of them wrote versions of the same sentence. Colbert spoke it softly. He does not learn when corrected, he retaliates. The audience didn't laugh. They nodded. Here's the hardest truth, Colbert said. He didn't change. He lifted his hand slightly. The stage did. He paused. High school became boardrooms. Boardrooms became television sets. Television became politics. But the behavior, Colbert said, stayed exactly the same. He looked down at the desk. You don't wake up one morning and become this person. He tapped the cover of the book gently. You rehearse it for years, for decades. And when someone tells you the truth early on, he said, and nobody listens, he looked up slowly. The truth doesn't disappear. He paused. It waits. The camera pushed in slowly. This was never about grades, Colbert said. His voice dropped low. It wasn't about intelligence. It wasn't even about ego. A beat. This was about accountability and the price we all pay when we mistake confidence for competence. He gestured toward the book. Someone tried to warn us. Silence. They wrote it down. Silence. They filed it carefully. Silence. And we chose applause instead. Colbert straightened his back. So tonight, he said, we didn't expose a scandal. He looked into the camera, steady, unwavering. We read a receipt. He slid the book across the desk away from himself. Because you can rewrite your own story. He leaned back. But you can't rewrite the people who watched you live it. A long, heavy pause. Class, Colbert said quietly, was never dismissed. Fade to black.